Okay, and hey, it's Rob. Thank you for joining me. I'm doing my second interview with an artist. I'm really excited. This one's kind of come up out of the blue today, but there is a reason that we're on. I am with Chris Anderson. Hey, man, how you doing?
Good, are you?
I am doing
Oh,
very good. It's good to finally get a chance to like talk to you. We've interacted over social media a little bit and talked back and forth.
yeah.
I
I'm a
wanted to
person.
say you are a person. You actually thank you very much for this.
Of course.
I love this thing so much. I did a video of it of some original artwork that I was able to pick up, but this means a lot to me. It's one of my favorite things. I stare at it constantly. So thank you for that.
Of course.
But we're on here because, well, I wanted to. I always intended once I started doing interviews, I always intended to hit you up and see if we could talk sometime.
Yeah.
But there's a Kickstarter campaign going on right now for Ghost Agents. Is it Ghost Agents Metropolis? Like that's the title of it?
Yeah, it is a flip book. So I think that is the official flip book name for this one.
Right. That's
I
my
don't know if there's a
understanding of it.
subtitle for the actual Ghost Agent story in this one. Could be.
Yeah.
Should know that.
Yeah. Right. Kind of brief. But just for anybody that's looking, I've got one copy of one of the previous ones, Ghost Agents. I did a whole video on it. It's one of the coolest books I've ever seen. It was very different, and I was shocked at how much I was just blown away. Especially the idea that they put it on newsprint.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting, and I'm like, why do I love this so much? There's
Yeah.
just something about it really interesting.
Yeah, it's nostalgia.
Yeah, there's that, and it looks good. It has a specific look that is just really unique, you know.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so for the Kickstarter for Ghost Agents Metropolis, it's live right now. There's a campaign that's going. They just started today. I think they've started pretty strong from what I
Yeah.
saw. And I have, fortunately, I reached out to the guy. So there's Rocco Jerome and Eli Schwab. Do I have those names right?
That's right.
Uh, yeah, I reached out to Rocco one time not too long ago, about a year ago, and I was like, "Is there any room for? I'm an artist. I'm interested." And he gave me a 6-page story that will be in this thing. So
Oh, right.
I've got a little game, so I'm kind of excited for that.
Yeah.
So it'll be my first time, honestly, something being printed in something besides the stuff I've done on my own.
That's awesome.
So, and you've contributed quite a bit to the book that I was showing. You drew about half of this thing, right? Isn't that correct?
Like almost half of it. Yeah, there's a lot. Well, maybe not
Yeah.
exactly, but there's a lot. I have a lot of stories in there because one of them is there. One of them in there is even doubled up because Rocco saw my flats on it and he liked it so much as like a piece of pop art, which is really kind of what this is it's pop art. It's an artifact.
Yes.
The book itself because it's almost treasury size. It's bigger, way bigger than a regular comic. And like
Yes.
you said, newsprint, so it's a tactile thing, and it's very, poppy. So yeah, he even reprinted one of the stories that I did in there with just the flats in it. So
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." And I'm like, "This
yeah,
is really it looks very unique." And I
yeah,
was blown away. Again, I did a whole video on it, and I was just going on about there's so much good art in there, and it's so different. It feels very different than a lot of mainstream stuff, and
yeah.
that's what really stand out. So I
Yeah,
was just shocked at.
that's the stuff that's really popping lately in the comics world is, the stuff that isn't mainstream. I just wish that there was an easier way for all this stuff to get out because there's so much more interesting stuff that I personally would rather read than, any big two thing that's hitting the shelves right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a long time since I was excited about anything from Marvel or DC or Image, even any of
Hmm.
those guys. I still love the characters. I just, do you think it's just a thing where the corporate characters you kind of just age out?
There may be something to
You know?
that, but I'll tell you what gets me excited about them again is when they pull in interesting creators, like when they pull Trad Morin to do Silver Surfer, or Doctor Strange, or when they pull in Daniel Warren Johnson to do Wonder Woman, or Beta Ray Bill. Those were like really fun and exciting books, and it didn't have to follow any kind of continuity. You didn't have to buy the book every month, and all that stuff. You weren't, a slave to this thing, and it's just not welcoming, I think, when you come in and you have no idea. You know about the X-Men because you saw the X-Men cartoon, but then you go in and you pick up the X-Men book, and it's completely different than, what you expect it to be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I find myself like there was a time when I wanted to read X Men, for example, or whatever. But as it's gone on, I'm like more interested in the creative team and whatever they're doing, especially the artists. I'll
Mm,
pick up anything.
exactly.
Um, I've left
That's
the
the other
X Men
thing.
behind,
Yeah,
but you find the right artist and writer on it, I'll start picking it up again. But none of the
totally.
artists that I want to see are drawing that much. I mean, some are, but there's a lot of them that just don't draw anymore, and it's frustrating to me.
Yeah, and I think that they have to, as a corporation, I think in those things they have to try to keep it as rigid and to the house style or whatever as possible, without crossing a line for the most part, and I think that can just kills it a little bit, cuts its nuts off, you know.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you kind of like, we were saying, I've found shockingly, like there's so much, it's an interesting time for individual creators because you can create a book if you have the discipline to sit down and create, which a lot I say this on my channel a lot. I've known a lot of guys that talk about all the stuff they're going to do, all these ideas they have. I've got this massive story for 100 issues and all these characters. I'm like, where's one issue? Show me anything. I'm working
Yeah.
on it. I'm like, okay,
Uh-huh.
sure, you have something made, let me know. But that aside, if you got the discipline, you can print up copies of your own book. You can make it. There's so
Yeah.
many options, and so just now it's a matter of finding something that really catches your eye, and that's a tricky part, is getting eyes on it.
Yeah.
Getting visibility.
Mhm.
That's tricky because there's so many. I mean, just get on social media and start following artists, and there's so many good people out there. I'm constantly like flipping through Instagram, and I'm like, man, sometimes I think I could draw. And then I look at what I'm finding online. I'm like, I'm nothing compared to so many other artists. But what keeps me going is I'm like, I mean, there might be better artists, but I have, for example, a volume of work that I can give to somebody and you can read a story. And I think that tends to be what I have to offer.
Yeah.
I don't want to just draw, but I want to tell a story. I want a book that you can read, and that's what interests me. And so that's why it's fun to get out there, I think, and find some of this stuff like ghost agents. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so again, that's why I'm a big believer. Like I said, I was shocked at that book, and I wanted to push the Kickstarter. I reached out. I'm like, what can I offer? How can I help? I want to see this thing be successful, and it also, like I said, is an opportunity to talk to you.
Sure.
So thank you for taking the time out to um, have a conversation with a guy you've never met, but we've chit chatted. I think we've got similar
Yeah.
enough interests.
Oh,
It'll be
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So yeah. So how long have you been drawing?
Well, I mean,
I mean,
I've been drawing my whole life, but professionally, probably about, I would say 5 years now. Well, about 5 years now full time.
nice.
Before that,
Oh,
I was a
nice.
teacher. Yeah.
Really? What did you teach?
I taught preschool.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a big shift. But
We had a
art,
Yeah.
something you were always interested in. You finally found a way to make it your career.
Yeah, when I moved, I live in Los Angeles. When I moved here, I started an animation company. So I did art back in the late '90s, early 2000s. But I found that I didn't love animation, and I always loved comics. Comics was always it. Animation was just like, well, and at that time the bubble had burst, and it wasn't looking like, drawing comics was a way to make a living anymore, unfortunately.
Right.
And so I kind of was like, well, animation, probably always like that. And I just found that I hated it. And so I decided I wanted to do something, good with my life. So I went into teaching it, but that burned out real quickly too. And so, and I also do storyboards for, you know, TV shows and commercials and things like that.
Oh,
Um, and I was getting a lot more of those jobs, and another school was coming in and trying to take me to run their music program actually, and was going to pay me a lot more money than I was making teaching preschool. Well, go figure, huh?
right.
And my wife was like, you know, just if you don't do this, if you don't quit and try to do this now, you're never going to do it. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So we struggled for about a year until I got on my feet, and it's been great ever since. It was the best decision I ever
Wow,
made, is going full time into making comics and doing storyboards. So yeah, about
that's
5 years.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you've been, how long have you known? Like, do you remember how old you were, like when you first started? Were you always drawing as a young, very young
Yeah,
kid?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yep, yep,
you're
yep.
all
It was just kind of
drawing.
one of those things since kindergarten that I knew that, you know, when people pay attention to you, something that makes you special or different or whatever, you know, you latch onto it, I think, as a kid, and I could draw a little bit better with my crayons than the, you know, little girl next to me or whatever. And so that's what I latched onto, and I knew right then that I was going to be an artist. And then probably, you know, by the time I was 10, then I knew I was going to be a comic book artist.
Oh, really? Like by
Oh
10,
yeah.
you were thinking
Oh
direction?
yeah. That it was
Uh,
destiny.
yeah. So you were reading comics around age 10?
Probably around age 10, I would say. Definitely by yeah, yeah, from 10 or 11 was when I really got into them. They were always sort of around. I had older brothers who had boxes of comics, and my dad loved older comics, and uh, yeah, the '89 Batman movie. I would have been about 12 when it came out, but there was a long lead up to that, um,
Yeah.
in marketing, and I think that kind of really steered me into picking up comics around then,
Yeah.
you know, and that
Yeah.
was just right around the time that, you know, Rob Liefeld was doing, I think, New Mutants at the time, around there, 1990, maybe 89, 90. And then,
Right.
yeah, that stuff just sort of tu tumbled into the Image guys and all that stuff, and I was just in, I was
Yeah.
hooked.
Sounds like we're the exact same age, so I was
Mm,
kind of right there. My dad always loved comics. He'd talk about it, and I don't know what spurred it. Somehow, just one day, my older brother decided he wanted to get some comics, and he came home with some. My older brother's like a year and a half older than me, so close enough that we're really tight. And we just started reading these things. I knew Superman, I knew Batman from cartoons and movies, but I'm like, here's the comics, and it just was like, oh, this is fun. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. I was late to the game. As far, I was never like a small kid that knew he wanted to draw. It
mm,
was when the Ninja Turtle movie came out, and I bought the soundtrack on cassette tape, and inside that cassette tape was a little sticker of the Ninja Turtles back to back, and I'm like, I'm gonna try and draw. So I got out a piece of like lined paper just like this,
yeah.
and just drew, and I reproduced it almost roughly speaking, perfectly. And I was like, I think I could draw. And I was like, what year did the first Turtle movie come out? 90?
Probably around then, 91 maybe.
And it wasn't until that I was like, I might be able to draw. So I don't know why I was slow to the game, but I sure always liked comics and characters and creativity. And so I
Yeah.
was right there at that young or early teenage kid to see the rise of Image Comics. And man, what a time that was. It was just
Yeah, it was.
wild.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, what were your favorite books? Do you have a memory of which ones you're reading? You're like, holy crap, this is amazing.
Well, you know, if you asked me now what the stories were about, I couldn't tell you. I
Right.
because I think they were just terrible back then. But I was definitely hooked on Rob Liefeld, for sure.
We all
Anything
were.
that he put out, anything that Jim Lee put out, I was crazy for it. Todd McFarlane a little bit. Um, so you know, definitely a Liefeld junkie. I really tried to copy his work in the early days.
Me too.
And
he had a way that looked
uh,
like it looked achievable, right? It looked like I can do this.
y-
I get
y-
it.
yeah, it was achievable because everything was very round. You know,
Yeah.
everything that he does is there's no sharp angular lines. You don't have to know anatomy. You know, you can just go. You just go, and you know, as much as people kind of crap on him for his stuff, you know, he did get a lot of kids into comics. You know, you got to give him that. And it
Oh yeah.
didn't matter if his anatomy was right. I mean, Jack Kirby's anatomy wasn't right. It was, you know, just it
Right.
was just supposed to be fun and bombastic,
Yeah.
and it was.
It was. Yeah, his work, I remember reading it. I'm like, this is fun. It's exciting. I try and reproduce those drawings. He did a lot of facial things that I would like reproduce, especially like eyes and nose and mouth. And I was like
Yeah,
reproducing at the same time because it looked great. It was energetic and fun. You know, I've got occasional, I talk about his work on my channel, but I say his old stuff is the stuff I really like. And to this day, even
mm,
looking back on it, I like that older stuff. I'm like, something about it. There was just some kind of interesting energy about it that just worked. And it's undeniable. His success, it was there.
yeah, it definitely was. I think I talked to a friend who kind of explained it kind of well to me, and I was kind of asking him like, why did I like that stuff so much? I mean, it was like a drug. It really was. Like I would look at it, and the adrenaline would just looking at pictures, it would
Yeah.
rush through my little head. And he said, "Well, you know,
Yeah.
you were a kid, and kids, you know, psychologically are attracted to like rounder, not angular things, and all of his anatomy is, you know, round and angular like that. And but then when he gets into the face, that's when he tightens things up, you know, and humans are, you know, predisposed to, you know, concentrate on the face, and that's where all of his
Yeah.
concentration was. And so I think
Yeah.
there was something to that. It was like a magical, you know, thing that he developed. And then as he went on, he just sort of became you know, a caricature of himself. And I think it got a little less exciting. And, you know, we grew up and our tastes changed too, you know, so
Yeah.
it's just part of the cycle. It's just the way it works.
Yeah, yeah. I was a big fan of his, but for me, it's funny because there was a window of time when I was reading comics, and it wasn't about the artist. I never noticed a name. To me, it's just all comics had good art, and I was just enjoying them as just a reading experience. Just
Yeah.
random issues of Spider-Man and then Superman and all these things. And at some point, I started paying attention to names, and then I just started noticing. Like I was reading X-Men, I'm like, man, this looks good, but I didn't think of it, like I said, in terms of a name. And then another issue would come along, like, this doesn't look as good. What the hell happened? So I go back and I'm like, oh, there's this guy named Jim Lee drawing this. Oh, so maybe that makes a difference. It sounds stupid to say, but for a time I didn't pay attention to names. It was just a comic with artwork, and they're just cool. But I'm like, one looks better than another to my eye. And so
Yeah.
Jim Lee there was no one better than him. I just could not believe the stuff that he would draw. And granted, I didn't have a wide, you know, I didn't know everybody. I just knew the few artists that I'd seen in some books, but his work to me at the time was just unbelievable, especially that
Yeah.
Uncanny X-Men. Just, I still love it. I still think
Yep.
it looks amazing.
It does.
So,
It holds up. It holds up.
yeah, I love looking at those old books. And talking about even those old books when I dig them out, and even on that newsprint, like we were talking about in the Ghost Agents book, how these things are printed on newsprint. Oh,
Yeah.
I just randomly opened it.
There's the pop art pages.
Not,
Yep.
I just flopped it open. But that's your color holds, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
But
works.
anyway, there's some newsprint, and then one of the things I'm enjoying the most going through on my channel is at the same time as all these books were coming out, Classic X-Men was being um, published, where they're
Hmm.
reprinting old issue X-Men, and I was picking them up with when they just before the Dark Phoenix saga, and I'm
Yeah.
looking at them now, and I'm just something about that art and that artist John Byrne and Terry Austin on inks, the coloring and printed on that newsprint. I'm like, there's no way to make this any better.
Yeah.
Like it's in some way, even if they were to take, I've seen them take a lot of these old comics and reprint them on like new paper that's glossy and reprint the colors exactly as they were. It doesn't look as good.
No.
You,
No, that's why I've been very slowly, I've been on a New Gods kick. I've been on like my very first Jack Kirby kick, and I don't know why it's taken me this long to get into it. But I have, I think, Mr. Miracle, like the 100th birthday or 100th anniversary of Jack Kirby, birthday of Jack Kirby collection that they put
yeah.
out, and it's got these real bright flat colors on this glossy paper, and I can't read it. So I've been going
Right.
on eBay and finding like just crummy reader copies and reading it that way, and it's so much more of an enjoyable experience. Plus the smell, that musty attic smell.
Yes, I pick up these ones. I wish I would have thought of that. I wish I had some sitting right here with me. Oh, in fact, I do. Like I was just looking at this one,
Yeah,
and you pop them open, and I can't help but like that. You smell that old newsprint, and then there's just something about the way that these look. I'm like, it's perfect. Even
yeah,
this old comic that's printed in I think '89, yeah, October of '89, and then reprinting it. It's not the same. I don't like the colors. That bright
no,
glossy doesn't work.
yeah, yeah. That paper sucks it up, and then it yellows over time, and it ages better.
Yeah. The only thing that I also find also kind of equally frustrating is then I'll go and look up the original artwork, the black and white artwork from John Byrne, and I I respect him, but I've never been a big fan. But then I start looking at the original work on these things, and it's so good, and
Yeah,
so much is lost in the news printing. So it's like a lot of the line work is lost, but it still looks perfect. So
yeah,
I would rather read beautiful, crisp reproductions of the black and white artwork or this old newsprint version.
yeah.
You
Me
know,
too. Me too.
I'm glad that there's other people that get it because I'm like, anybody who doesn't read comics might pick this up and be like, how do you think this old newsprint looks better than I'm trying to find an example of, you know, I just happen to have this here, but something printed on really bright, shiny, glossy paper. Like to the person who doesn't know, you'd think the bright, glossy paper is always better, but no, there's something about that newsprint that it's just fantastic. So I
Yeah,
had
and I think that's also, I'm not trying to like shit on the glossy stuff per se, but I think it's just a personal thing, but we both seem to share about it. But
yeah,
definitely it's there's a tactile, there's a olfactory, thing to it, and there's a bit of nostalgia that, for people our age, which let's face it, is the majority of American comic buyers, you know,
it is.
um,
Yeah, kids
that
read
we
comics.
like, well,
Yeah, yeah,
they read them like crazy, but it's just not the stuff that we read.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What the somewhere recently or talking like the American comics market, like Marvel and DC, is only like what 10% of that. The rest of it's manga,
Yeah,
something
I
like that.
understand that a number came out like that. Yeah, I'm not sure how. I think Mark Miller said that. I'm not sure
Right.
if that's
Yeah.
right, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. I'm sure that's very close to the
I
reality,
read a
and
lot of
that's
manga too,
you makes you wonder.
so
I I haven't got into it. I know there's good
mm,
stuff, and I don't even know where to start. It seems so
yeah.
vast. When you go look at a comic shop and the shelf is just lined with volumes, I'm like, I don't even know what to do.
Start by flipping through and look for art that you like. That's what I do. I have a lot of stuff that I have from Japan that I can't. Obviously, I can't. Not obviously, but I can't read Japanese, but I can tell what's going on in it because they're doing their job right, and the way that they pace it, it's just boom, 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 and it's you can learn so much from that storytelling wise and
Mhm.
pull it into your own stuff. It's great.
Yeah, I need to start attempting to find some stuff that I really like. So how did you get connected with the ghost agents guys? How did you like connect with those guys and get working on the book with them, the stuff that you've done? Because you're doing the cover on the Kickstarter on the one that's going right now, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if going back, I think uh, before lockdown, I started watching the Cartoons Kayfabe uh, channel as they
Yep.
were going over the Wizards again, nostalgia.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, and there was a Facebook group, Cartoons Kayfabe Ringside Seats, that
Mm.
I started to follow and talk to like-minded people. And then when lockdown happened, they went, they all got together to start to do this image grand design book and grand
Right.
disaster. And so everybody got on a Zoom call and had a meeting about it. And I was working on other projects and stuff like that. And most of the people, this was the first time they were ever going to do something, and I didn't want to get in the way of that at all. But I still had this love for like the early image stuff, and I thought it would be fun to play around in that a little bit. I didn't want to write anything. I didn't want to expend too much energy on doing stuff, and I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to stay out of people's way. But Rocco Jerome, who uh, writes in kind of oversees and created Ghost Agents,
Yep.
was one of the editors on that, and I kind of went to them all and said, "Listen, I will just do whatever you need to get this thing over the hump because there's so many people in this project, and I know that it's a huge undertaking, and I have experience, and I can knock stuff out pretty quick. If you need me to do something, color this or letter that or whatever you need me to do. If there's a couple pages that somebody dropped the ball on and you need it filled in, I'll take it and I'll get it to you as fast as I can." So I kind of did that, and then I did the cover for Grand Disaster too. So we did that, and then Rocco was just kind of like, thank you so much for doing that. If you ever want to work together again, let me know. And I was talking with Eli, who is the publisher of Cosmic Lion, who put out Grand Disaster. He's putting out Ghost Agents. He puts out Wizard also. And so I was thinking of doing a story for Wizard #2. And Rocco said, "Well, hey, I've got this thing called Ghost Agents. Why don't we put a story of that into Wizard #2?" Um, Craig CK was working on a story for Ghost Agents, but it was taking some time, and it was going to be the first story. But since it was taking some time and he wanted to get something out there, we did the story, and it ended up being in Wizard #2, and then it also wound up being in Apocalypto, the first that treasury book that you have.
Right. Right.
So that's kind of how I got involved with it in the first place. And I do 2 or 3 stories for Apocalypto. I think I did 3 stories for Apocalypto. And then, like I said, one of them is doubled, so there's 4 stories in there. The second issue, or the second Ghost Agents that's being fulfilled right now, I didn't have anything to do with that one. I had other projects that I needed to work on. And then when this one came around, I wanted to be a part of it, but I wasn't sure if I was going to have enough time to bust out enough pages. So I asked if I could do the cover, and I was thinking of some ideas, and he had some ideas. He sent me some like pulp, like old like pulp men's magazine or book covers,
Right.
like classic illustrations. And so I said, "Yeah, I want to try to tackle this," and I think I succeeded. I think I nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that cover, that's one of the tiers on the Kickstarter, and it
It was,
went.
yeah,
It was. You're right. I saw that. Like, boom! It was gone in the first couple hours. Right.
yeah, yeah,
That's awesome. That's got to make you feel good. Somebody wanted that. You
yeah,
know.
for sure.
That that's awesome.
It wasn't cheap
Yeah.
either.
No,
So,
no, there was a few bucks on it, and that's fantastic. Yeah, he was putting it out there for anybody to contribute if they wanted to donate some of their artwork, and I was like, I've got 6 pages I drew, and I did the best that I could do, but I don't know how you are. I mean, I think most artists are the same way. Once you do it, you try to do your best, but then you go back and look at it, and you're like, oh, I could have done this better. I know it's in me to do better, but I tried the best I could, and if you could put yourself into like a rut where you never complete anything if you keep redoing it. But I
yeah,
did the best that I could, and
I don't
he
do
asked if
that
anybody
honestly.
to, do you know.
Uh-uh.
Well, you're really good.
I'll say that I should have done better. I could have done better, or I would do this differently. But
Yeah.
I don't erase anything. I just keep I
Really?
you got to kick it out the door. You got to go. Keep going. You made a mistake? Oh well, it's permanent now. Move on. You know, don't do that again.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. There's a lot of my own personal comics that I've drawn where I'll redraw a couple of pages 4 or 5 times, and I've kind of gotten to a point where I don't need to do that. I don't do it anymore. But on occasion, I'm like, this is I just didn't nail it. But you're right. You won't get anything done if you keep working. Like would you get one thing perfect? Well, in the meantime, the guy next to you produced 20 things, and guess what? I want to see all the variety of stuff, not this one thing that you did.
Yeah, and you're the only one that's gonna be kicking yourself about it. You know.
I was gonna say, yeah, like no one else sees the problems that I see.
Right.
But yeah, he asked if anybody wanted to donate their pages, and like I said, I tried my best. I'm like, I like them, but I don't have any like emotional connection to them, so I offered them up. Like if anybody wants to, anybody wants to, as part of like a reward, wants the
People.
original pages. So
Yeah,
I
people love
bust
original
it out.
art.
I got them sitting them right here next to me, because honestly, they'll just sit on a shelf for the next till I die. You know what I mean? These pages.
This
Hopefully,
closet
my kid.
is stacked to the ceiling of pages.
Right. So if they go to somebody and they get enjoyment out of them,
Yeah.
that's fine with me. But
Yeah.
there's some stuff like I don't want to let go. I want to keep it because it means something to me. But these were I'm proud enough of them. I'm not trying to sound like too proud of myself, but I think they look okay. But if they go to somebody who would like to have them, then that's better. So
Yeah.
that was fun to do those.
You heard it. Back it.
Um,
Get Robert's art.
right. Yeah. 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 Back it. And there's a tier, and you can get some of my original artwork. I've got it sitting right here.
What are they going
Um,
for?
I think it was, I'm not sure. I think I don't know if he's selling them as a group. Like,
Oh, okay.
I think he's offering them as pieces.
Hmm.
But like my splash page, and they made a
Oh, look
poster
at
of this,
that.
and I didn't know they were doing that.
That's
You
cool.
know, so
Yeah, that looks great, man.
I was really trying to make this work, and he wanted a very specific kind of motorcycle, and I don't like drawing machines hard,
Yeah.
so that was fun. But yeah, these things are, they're up there for anybody that's interested in getting them.
Oh,
Um,
those look great, man.
I mean, I thank you. It means a lot coming from you because you do you do really good work, and it makes me think. I wanted to point out that, like me,
Ooh,
you
I
and
like that
I
one.
were this one. I know my lighting's not great, but yeah, I was
No,
trying to
it's
go
great.
for something the final page there. I I think it kind of worked,
It
but
does. Yeah, it does.
I was going to say that we're kind of a dying breed in that we both still work traditionally,
Hmm.
like ink on paper. So many people that I know, I mean, there's very few people I know anymore, like that don't do it digitally. And I get the reason for digital artwork, but it just doesn't interest me, even with all the benefits you can get of time and speed and full production just on your one device. I want to be sitting here at my drawing table with all my pencils and my ink and my brushes, and that's what I like. And I like having original work, and I like having a pile of work that I get to leave for like my kids. You
Yeah.
know, that it's things like that. My parents are both very artistically inclined, and they would tell me all the time about stuff they would draw back in the day. I'm like, where is it? And they're like, oh, we threw it away. No one cared. I'm like, oh, I want to kill you. You know how much I would
Yeah.
love to have artwork from you guys and have it in my hands now.
Yeah.
So I've got stacks of work, and I hope to, I've got two young boys, they're 11 and 8, for example, and I would like to think that this would mean something to them. I know it would mean something to me, and I think it will. So that's just one reason, but just doing it by hand, looking at getting a piece of original artwork from somebody, and I get up close to it and I can see the brush marks, and I'm like, how do you do this, or how do you make those lines? And you start dissecting it. You
Yeah.
know, you could kind of do the same thing with digital. Like, what tool did you use? What brush did you download? But I like the physical stuff, and I'm never going to change. I'm always going to be doing it this way.
Yeah, I'm the same. For storyboards and things, I have to work digitally because there's so many revisions and think little things need to be moved. But
Yeah,
yeah, for comics, I've done a couple things digitally. In fact, I think one of the stories in Apocalypto
yeah,
uh, was done digitally. But and I did a story for Tales to Enlighten, uh, the newest one that came out. I did that digitally, kind of just as experiments, and they were
right.
fine. They were fine. They weren't bad. There were some cool tricks that I could do in there, like you said, quickly. That would take me
Yeah,
a lot longer traditionally, but yeah, no, I'm a brush guy. I use a real brush, or I've rediscovered my love for these Pentel brushes, and that's
I've got one of those right
where I'm
behind me
at.
too. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
very convenient. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah, and I love getting the opportunity to go look at like some professional artists, like looking up their work and seeing the stuff on the board. There's something magical about, like, even if it's only like an artist edition. I was looking through the Todd McFarlane Spider-Man artist edition, or it's reproduced at full size, and
Yeah.
just looking at his work at full size, and he's been digital for years now, and
Yeah.
like I was gonna say, it kind of makes me sad because there's nothing he's putting on paper anymore. This stuff made me appreciate his work even more.
Yeah.
Like, some people are like, oh, he's all flash and style. I'm somewhat sure, but
He always
he put a
was,
lot.
but
Yeah, but he put a lot of effort and ink and design and energy and joy and fun to my eye. I'm
yeah.
like, oh, it looks so neat. I got done flipping through that book. I'm like, I want to draw. I want to go draw.
Yeah.
I need to draw.
Absolutely.
It gets me inspired. So yeah.
There's nothing wrong with flash. You
Um,
you, you want to look at that.
I maintain that, there's always the debate of what's more important in a comic, the art or the story. I'm like, art
Mm.
has to be the first thing because it makes you, that's all you see is you visually look at it. And what keeps you is a good story. But
My philosophy is that you need to really find a balance between the two because it does need to be interesting art, and it does need to be cool to look at, and there does need to be things going on, but also like clarity over everything else because your job is a storyteller. Even if
yeah,
get rid of all the words, you're still telling a story, you know? So there
yes,
there there was I do think that that's where the problem with those early image guys was is that there was so much flash going on that it got
yeah.
in the way of the storytelling. And Todd McFarlane is not a good storyteller. Um, and he could have had he paid attention to that, he could still have drawn the way that he did, and also been a good storyteller. You know what I mean? So like, you can find a balance of those two things.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. And then, I think some of them might be better storytellers than maybe we saw because what was selling this big flashy crazy artwork. So this is what's selling, so do that, but then you're sacrificing the the long-term value of it. You get older. I talk about it all the time on my channel. Like, there's all these books, they were so magical to me as a kid, but you read them now as an adult, you're like, it's not the same. I don't want to revisit this too often. The artwork's great, but then it gets kind of old, once you start seeing the
Yeah.
same thing over.
Yeah, yeah. Although, like, you could take a Rob Liefeld comic, knock out all the words, you can't tell what's going on in it at all. But you take an Eric Larson book and you knock out all the words, and you can tell exactly what's going on because he was a storyteller
That's
and
that's a
still really cool artwork. And
perfect
Mark
example.
Silvestri
Yeah.
had it all.
Yes.
Mark Silvestri is
Yeah.
probably the best draftsman out of all of them. He's the best illustrator out of all of them, really. He had Flash in there, but he was a really good storyteller too.
Yeah. That's my opinion. Is that he can draw all the amazing stuff, but then he just went into like, oh, this is what's selling. This is what's crazy. This is what the kids want. And even he talks about he doesn't like his '90s work. His words were, "I don't like my '90s work." but yeah, he's so good. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think and just like you were saying, Eric Larson is so good as a storyteller. He got the flash and the style, but you can follow the story. I don't think he gets enough credit. Sometimes some people kind of forget, because he's just quietly doing Dragon for the last 3 decades, and
Yeah.
you know, but he's really good. So you're absolutely right. But you take all the words out of a issue of Youngblood, you might what? Okay, these
You
guys
can't.
are punching and the pay. Who's this?
Yeah, you can't tell what's
So
going on even with the words.
yeah, you know, um, it's good times. It's just such good memories. All those old
Yeah, but
books,
it's still fun to look at.
very much. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Doing my channel, I'm digging out a bunch of stuff that I've flipped through a million times, but that was years ago. So I'm looking at it for the first time in years. You
Yeah.
know, it's like I'm very familiar with it, but you get to kind of reevaluate it, and you're like,
Hmm.
this works, this doesn't. This was fun, but this is not so. You just kind of get to reevaluate all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Let's see. Sorry, I'm a terrible interviewer. I'm looking at my notes of things I wrote down to talk to you about. I'm just trying to see what else I may have missed. What works have you talked about? The Ghost Agents, but different books that you've had your work published in, comics. I mean, you talked a little bit about that. Did you mention all the ones you've had your work in?
Oh no, my first, I did a lot of anthologies in the very beginning while I was still teaching. Um, and then while I was teaching, uh, I met my creative partner in a few books, David Acampo, and we did this book called Lost Angels. Um, and uh, that was the first long form book that I ever worked on. We got picked up by a publisher called Comiker. It was a thing where they were kind of releasing it digitally first, 2 pages a week, and then until it was all done and collected. It was like hundred and maybe 40-page book by the time it was all done. Um, and so I drew and colored that one, and I learned a lot doing that very first book. Knock on wood, Lost Angels coming to a television screen near you sometime in the future. I hope. We'll see. It got
Yeah,
optioned twice now, so we'll see.
that's
Um,
big.
which is always fun.
Uh, you
That's a side thing, but always a good thing to 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 have. And then after that, we started doing, well, actually, while we were doing Lost Angels, David and I started working on another book. Well, actually, here, this is Lost Angels. Here's the cover of Lost Angels.
oh wow,
And
that
so
looks
you can
neat.
see, let's see. Yeah, I was still sort of like figuring out how to story tell, and I drew very differently then than I do now. Um, Big cityscapes and all sorts of stuff going on. Really fun story.
Yeah,
And then I was drawing a lot of wings and coloring this thing myself. So we started to do these like 12-page horror stories and print them out as little shorts that we could sell at conventions and things like that. And then eventually we collected it just last year. It took 6 years, but we got to the end and collected it as Spectral. So that's a story that's told by. So here's like the opening sequence of it. This sort of little
oh, that's amazing.
caravan comes through, and out of it, this puppeteer starts telling stories to these kids, and then we walked through it, and the first story in there is called Devil Skin, and it's a story about a devil, and then whenever the devil kind of character kind of shows up, it's all in spot red. And then
That is awesome.
we went to Witch Heart was the next one, and so the witch is in green, and then we worked our way through the spectrum, like purple for the vampire and techno vampire. So that was a lot of fun. That was a really cool. It's a really cool book. I highly recommend people pick it up. And
Seriously,
then
sold a copy to me because that looks amazing. I've seen the title, but seeing like a hint of what's in it, I'm like, oh my god, that looks amazing. So very
Yeah,
cool.
that was a lot of fun. And then while I was working on Spectral, um, I met Mark Sable, who is a writer who worked in for DC and did some stuff for at Boom and has a bunch of creator-owned stuff at Aftershock and things like that. And we put together this book called Chaotic Neutral, which is very much like a black and white Dungeons and Dragons book. Now, this has been we kickstarted it 2 years ago, and it's finally about to get into people's hands. We've got it already because it's also a comic module, like a game module.
Okay.
So it took a while to put that stuff together. It was a bigger undertaking than we thought it was going to be. So that's about to be released. Um, and then while I was doing all of that stuff too, I was also writing and drawing stories for Heavy Metal magazine. So my first story was a story with Justin Jordan of Luther Strode fame, and then I started writing and drawing my own stories for them. So hopefully, I'm going to be able to take those stories now that Heavy Metal's folded and finish the story that I didn't get to finish and release it. We'll see. I'm in negotiations with them to do that right now, and then also worked with Kyle Strom, who did Spread and Twig with Scotty Young. He's a really great artist, and Matt Mitchell. And we did this. I did a short story in this book called Horrorium, and issue 2 is about to come out at the end of this month. So yeah, and then a sprinkling of other things here and there. I'm working on some other things that are about to come out, and doing a lot of
Awesome.
stuff for my Patreon. I mean, you did the episodes about the issues of these things. My Masters of
Love
the
this thing.
Universe.
I love this
Yeah.
thing so much. You would never see this anywhere else. This little bug-eyed thing. It's so brilliant, man. I try not to sound like I'm trying to like falsely kiss your ass, but I'm dead serious when I was like, this, I had so much joy. I had the kind of joy that I used to get from comics because it's so different, so unexpected, you know. And the same
Right.
with the other short stories you did. I was just like, I want more, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Right
thank you for
now,
letting me.
so oh, of course. Yeah. So those books, since they are, I don't own the rights to those characters. You can only get them as a gift. I will
Mhm.
give them to you for free if you sign up to my Patreon.
Yep.
So I'm
Yep.
doing another story actually right now where there's a tier in there where for a certain amount of money, if after a year you can help me plot one of the stories. And so there was somebody who signed up for that tier, and after a year now, we worked to plot out a new story that I'm about to get going on about Panther and uh, Night Stalker, the horse.
Right. Is it
Uh,
the one of the
yeah,
robot?
yeah, it's like Skeletor's robot horse. So it's a
Right.
story of Night Stalker and Panther, and it's all silent. So that's going to be the next one, and then I'm also like doing at this very moment. I'm doing it's October, so everybody's sort of doing their version of Inktober, and I wasn't going to do it because I was so busy. I'm working on
Right.
storyboards for a TV show right now, and I was getting really burned out doing them, and I was like, I just need to do something for myself. So the other day, I started doing these new drawings. Like there's Mechanic,
I saw it. I
and
loved it.
there's Blast Attack blowing himself up.
Wow.
Um, And else did I do here? Oh yeah, Battle Cat,
Yeah. Loved that.
and
Loved it.
I'm getting a little bit of a jump start. So tomorrow will be Evil Lynn once I'm done with that. But yeah, so once I'm done with that, I should have like 30 more drawings of characters, and I'll do another sketchbook and send it out to people. And then I'm about to start my own uh, book that I will first be serializing on my Patreon too. So another good reason for people to sign up to that,
There you go.
because you'll read it before I collect it and do anything with it. So it should
Yeah.
be a real fun one.
That's awesome. One of my questions I always wanted to ask, you know, I was going to
Yeah.
say I always people, but you're the second person I've talked to. But it's always in the back of my head to a creative person is if you could do anything, you know, comics related, like budget aside, rights aside, like what is the absolute dream project for you? Like if
Hmm.
somebody were to offer to you, you know what I mean? Is there such a thing,
Yeah.
or you know what I mean?
I mean, there's a few things I think. Um, I would love to do, God, you know, I'd love to do a Thundar, the Barbarian book. That would be a lot of
Oh
fun.
yeah,
Or my own, you know, just like I'm doing the Masters of the Universe stuff. Just, you know, spend a little bit more time on them. A Swamp Thing I always wanted to do. Swamp. Oh, because I also worked on Creep Show, the TV show, and the comic with Greg Nicotero. Um,
nice.
so that sort of got people to like. For a while, I was like the horror guy that everybody was kind of going to. So like Swamp Thing would be a really fun, you know, horror book for me to do, or Dead Man. I would love to do that. Over at Marvel, I would love to do a Silver Surfer book or
Ooh,
a Man Thing or something crazy, just something
yeah,
crazy.
that's awesome. I can see what I've seen of your work. All of those sound like perfect for kind of the vibe that you do, man. That would be fun. Yeah, I've always like X-Men was the greatest thing to me at the time, and so I kind of would default to that in a way. But my versions of the characters that I like are 30 years old. You know, I don't
Yeah,
follow them anymore. I don't know what they are anymore. So I don't know how that would work. But given the chance, you know, I got an X-Men story in me, I think, but I don't know what that would be.
yeah,
But yeah, those are all great ideas. When you said Silver Surfer, I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. You know, that I
yeah.
could see
Get
you
big
doing
and
that.
weird and cosmic. You know, you can go
Right.
kind of psychedelic in it, and you can pull in all sorts of monsters and weird stuff in
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. That sounds like a fun thing. Definitely.
Yeah,
Um, that's fantastic, man.
that's sort of the project that I'm going to be doing on my Patreon is sort of, I call it my kitchen sink project because it's really throwing all of that stuff uh you know, together. So
Yeah.
I get to do it all. And just be kind of just fun and silly and over the top, you know, before I move on to some more serious projects that I want to work on, you know.
I think that just sounds to me just sounds amazing. Like you got a guy who you create, you draw, you write, and you're like, I'm going to do a passion project, and that sounds just that sounds like something I'd want to read. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
because I'm more interested in people like making a thing that they want to make rather than like I'm doing a job. You know,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
so I think you tend to put more heart and soul into it, and that comes out on
It
the
does. It shows on
page.
the page. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, kind of like you were saying, like I've got my own He-Man fan works, you know, and it's really stupid that I'm doing these because I can't do anything with them. I've had a lot of people like, why don't you do something that's your own? I'm like, because I started drawing this story, I got it in my head, and I just wanted to do it, so I just started drawing it, even
Mhm.
before like, there's no way I'd be able to print this because I've been working on it for a long time, and there were big gaps of time where I stopped um, various life events, and or I was doing some work for some small publishers, so I set that aside so I could focus on this stuff. There was gaps of time as long as a year, almost 2 years. One time I didn't even touch it, but um, it's just I got this story in my head, and I just had to tell it, and it just
Yeah.
and that was basically one. That was kind of the first story I come up with, but then it just kept going. Well, what would happen if this person showed up? So that became book two, and then it became book three, and then it was book four, and then I just did book five. And I got one more. Book six will wrap up the thing, and I'll have this complete fan fiction work that I can't do anything with. But I still like the idea of being able to hand it to someone and say, "Here's my story. Read it and tell me what you
Yeah.
think."
Hmm.
And I've gotten a lot of good feedback. It's I've never had anybody yet come to me and say, "Man, that was horrible." you know, I mean, maybe one day. I had a comic convention locally here that I went to like 2 weeks ago, and one guy I knew in high school just barely. I hadn't seen him in 3 decades. He rolled up, we talked, we chit chatted, and I showed him these fan comics, and he's like, "Let me buy issue one." So we bought issue one, and then the next day, another mutual friend of ours come up to me and said, "Hey, you remember the guy that bought the first book? He wants the rest. So
Yeah,
I'm here to buy them for him." I was like, "Oh, well, awesome." I
yeah,
guess he read it and was entertained enough to want to know where I'm taking it. So
that's awesome.
yeah, I got one more big volume to do, and then I'm gonna transition over to something that I can call mine.
Yeah,
So,
yep,
but for me, like I think any creative kind of would agree. Like sometimes you just get on a thing and I have to tell this story. I have to just go. I got to get this out. I want to do it because otherwise it just sits in your head and never goes anywhere. So
yeah,
I get that.
yeah,
So um, that was an awesome pile of works you showed me there, man. That's a really good pile of work to be able to show people, man.
yeah. There's more, but
You're big.
you know,
Sure, yeah, of course. You're a working professional, right, man? So you got works everywhere. So, just to kind of bring it back full circle, I wanted to make sure I mentioned again. I mean, I'm showing the copy of the Ghost Agents. That this is the copy of the book that I got from a previous one, but there's a new Kickstarter campaign that is live right now. It started today, right? Today is the
indeed.
October 3rd.
Yep.
So yeah, it just started going all month. I'll have a link in the description for everyone to see, and then we'll have links to connect to your Patreon, your website. We'll have all your information in there so
Great.
people can check that out. And if anyone gives a crap about any of my work, I've got some things. If anyone wants to donate, and then I'll just send you a copy of it.
Yeah.
you know,
Donate to the future
um,
works.
that's kind of it. It honestly, it all just goes back into future printings of the book.
Right.
I don't make any money on this, but it helps me keep copies on hand and keeps it out there to people. And um, it's fun. It's the most fun I've ever had. I have the stupid dumb analogy in my head that sounds really stupid, but like I was saying, I was doing a lot of work for some small press publishing guys, just very very small, bunch of talented, fun, enthusiastic guys. But I was working on covers and short stories for other people for a long time, and I learned a lot. I networked with a lot of people. It was a valuable learning experience. But I got to a certain point where I'm like, I want to do something for me. This is mine.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And once I started working on this and just doing the book that I wanted to do, I this is my dumb analogy, but in my head, I felt like what I imagined the Image Comics guys must have felt. I get to stop doing corporate work and do something that I own the way I want to, the way that I want to show it and tell it, and no one can tell me otherwise. And I was like, suddenly I was super happy. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, this is fun. I'm having so much fun. I'm not building a career. I'm just doing it as a hobby, but I want to do the thing that I want to do. So, you know, yeah, art's got to be enjoyable, right? You got to love what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, um, I don't know, man. Do you have anything else that you wanted to mention before we get going here? Like I said, we'll have all your links to your social media so people can follow you, and we'll get all that stuff listed.
Yeah. Come on, follow along and back
Yeah,
at Ghost
yeah. Follow.
Agents.
Yeah, and Ghost Agents. Yeah, go look this up. Like I said, we'll have the link in the description. Big Kickstarter. It's live. It's going right now as we speak. It's for the month of October. Um, like I'm not kidding when I say when I got this book, like it's a treasury size, right? That's what this is.
Mm-hmm.
So as compared to a regular size comic, like there's a difference in size.
Yeah.
Um, a person could look at the books and be disappointed. And the new campaign that's out, it's going to be just as awesome. I've seen a lot of the artwork in it, and I think things like this deserve some recognition. It's a really worthwhile effort that everyone's really putting in their heart and soul into, and I believe in it. So that's why I wanted to reach out and like bring my little YouTube channel and what can I help with. So,
Yeah.
and it was great to talk to you, man. Thank you for
You too.
sitting down and having a conversation. I know it was kind of last minute, you know what I mean? Hey, do you want to do this? Let's do it. And then today, here we are.
I'm just
So
sitting here drawing, man. You know?
yeah, I appreciate it. I've we've chit chatted back and forth a little bit, so it's good to talk to you and kind of get to interact one on one and talk art and stuff. It's
Totally.
been a lot of fun for me. So
Yeah, absolutely. Here, the same, man. It was really
yeah,
cool to discover your stuff and to get to know you a little bit and talk about it. And we have the same,
yeah,
similar interests. So yeah, it's really cool.
yeah. All right, man. Well, I guess that's everything I've got for now. So we'll get going here. So Chris Anderson, thank you for joining me. And everyone watching, please check out the Kickstarter campaign. It's worthwhile. It's very cool. There's a lot of cool add-ons. If you wanted to get some of my original artwork, there's some there, and there's like some others from other artists. So, but not your cover, man. That
Not
sold
mine.
instantly. That's proud of. That just went right away. So that's everything, and then that's all for now. So thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you on the next one. So goodbye, everybody.
Bye.